Hey there, this is Ashley Avis. I am here on the ground in Australia, and I wanted to put out a message to anyone who's watching this. For anyone that has information surrounding the Brumby cull, anyone who has information about the shooting of the Palomino stallion and his family, and for anyone who is bold enough to speak, any of the shooters, anybody who has been a shooter, anyone in the parks that knows what is going on with the Brumbies is egregious and knows that this is wrong, I'd really like to talk to you. As a journalist, I can maintain confidentiality. We can distort your voice. We need people to stand up. And I also have a message for the individual who approached me a few days ago in Dunbar at 6 a.m. within the BP station. The person who asked me if I was the girl on Facebook going on about the bloody Brumbies. It was very aggressive. And I think that somebody like you, if you are willing to talk to me about what your stance is on the Brumbies, we would like to hear from anyone who has information about what is going on in the park and anyone who is bold enough to speak, even if you don't agree with the compassionate solutions that we're putting forth. Contact at wildbeautyfoundation.org.
But I think we are live right now. We're set up here, just absolutely magnificent. We'll find out where we are. Of course, we're in Dunbar, as the location says so. We're broadcasting live this week from the Snowy Mountains to try and understand the New South Wales Government's heartless campaign to rid this area of Brumbies. Now, the cull has come to a temporary close, but the carnage will continue in November. Now, this isn't a fringe issue or environmental issue. There are other factors at play, much that we don't know. Whatever the reasons, these killings show a profound disregard for Australians by politicians and their hangers-on. And they are under no pressure at all. So let's talk. Who are the politicians standing for Australian values and decency? There aren't many. Angus Taylor, the federal Liberal leader, popped his head up recently, but his party at the New South Wales Shadow Minister for Environment and Shadow Minister for Heritage, Jacqui Munro, does not impress and is not on top of this area of her portfolio. And we saw Angus Taylor. He did a great job a couple of times on video. Once at a protest, another one outside Parliament. We thought he'd be a great guest to get on because he is enunciating some of the atrocities and the intrusion into the Australian way of life. We've asked him to come on several times and he's nothing yet. So hopefully Angus Taylor will come on. I do admire what he's saying, but words are very cheap. We need to have more than just words. We need actually action. So Angus, if you wish to come on, we are here. We will contact you again. A bit like a machine gun, but we'll keep trying and trying, or like Chinese water torture. And we're also going to talk about park management today, ecology, our country, and are they intent of taking away our entire, what we've known Australia to be? I think they are. I think there's a 2030 agenda, which is all over the federal government's website. It talks about basically joining at the hip with the UN. And I think by 2030, we're going to have an entirely different Australia than what we ever envisaged. Now, Instant Polls is our official sponsor. If you want to increase your bottom line, boost your communication with frontline staff and gather valuable data from your most important resource, that's your employees, visit instantpolls.online to learn more. Today's poll on the Country Telegraph is, which would you consider is the most neglected by governments in rural areas? Just use the QR code on our screen to vote. Each vote is secure and anonymous and verified by 2FA. Now, you have 24 hours to vote before the result is broadcast on the Country Telegraph at 1 o'clock tomorrow. The link will also be published on our Facebook page from 11 o'clock. Share the link and ask your family and friends to participate. We're going to talk about many of the issues around the park. I'm going to talk to Brett Smith in just a tick. And that's right here, by the way, on the Country Telegraph.
Australians are paying more and getting less.
Energy security is economic security.
Economic security is national security.
We sit on vast reserves of coal, oil and gas, but we are not fuel secure.
Policy unmoored from physics and economic reality has turned an energy-rich land into a decadent state.
No sector is being asked to bear more than agriculture and regional communities.
We are willfully turning a rich nation into a poorer one.
To keep Australia prosperous, sovereign and free is our duty, and in an uncertain world, our best defence.
I didn't choose this life. I was born to live it. So was Dad, Pa, his dad, and his dad before that.
Come on, ladies.
You're supposed to be slowing down, you know.
It's payback for all the free labour you got out of me as a kid.
I learned from watching my mum and dad and how they work together. So does my sister Sally.
Any trains? I know. Feet up.
I'll always remember these days. It's the happiest days of my life. Together as a family.
Oh, you're so lucky I love you.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that about right, isn't it?
I don't know how you're going to deal with all this.
Deal with what?
$6 million debt?
Most farmers are in this amount of debt. As farmers, we gamble with the weather every day, and it's a risk we take.
You have no idea what I'm going through. Maybe you should talk to someone. Oh my God, no, I'm fine. No, you're not, Alison.
You and your dad's coward.
Play a game of footy, all right?
Where's heaven?
What?
Where's heaven?
The sky, I think.
Can we go there?
And we're back again, Cam. You were a bit early on that one, but never mind. We still get there. Our host and guest today is Brett Smith, retired AFP detective and Snowy Mountains local emergency manager. Prior to his policing career, Brett spent 3 years as a National Park Ranger. Brett is the proprietor of Moonbar Huts, a pair of luxury off-grid log and stone cabins in the New South Wales Snowy Mountains. Thought I could get my MX-5 here until I saw those potholes. You would have seen me go down one and not come out. So thank you very much to Peter Cochrane for lending us his four-wheel drive. We did need it. Brett came to our attention last month when we read a sad post lamenting the loss of the animals he regarded as an intrinsic part of his landscape. Brett, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Mike.
Tell me about your the Moonbar Huts, first of all. It's not just a great place to stay. It really does remind you of what Australia was and probably should be.
Yeah, well, I guess it's something I always, loved as a kid, the old huts of the high country, and, it wasn't really a well-planned dream. It just sort of happened. I always wanted to be here, but building the huts just happened, and yeah, I'm glad it did. It's been it's been really rewarding, to be honest.
We'll play a video over the top of this this interview, and it just shows you you're sitting out somewhere around here, and you you slowly moved towards a Brumbie, and the Brumbie looked at you and took you into its confidence, and then basically became your friend. How can we do what we're doing to the Brumbies at the moment? Because I don't understand it. I think the whole thing is an abomination, because these animals, besides being beautiful, highly intelligent, and some have said, so what? But they're part of our history or heritage, and you go right back to the First World War. So we really do need to look after these magnificent animals, and to be described as a feral. I mean, that's the last thing these animals are, isn't it?
Yeah, well, in my opinion, and many others, that's certainly the case. I mean, I'm not a horse person per se. I've never owned a horse. I've never ridden horses. But, you know, I love all animals, and I'd never stand by and watch an animal be tortured or, you know, be cruelly treated and not speak up. I couldn't live with myself if I did. And I think, you know, I'm not an complete extreme animal liberationist. We eat the deer here occasionally.
Poor deer.
Poor deer, yeah.
Deer.
I actually feel sorry every time I do it, but, you know, I reconcile that with the fact that, you know, the alternative for someone who eats meat is to go into Woolies and, you know, buy a packet of beef or whatever. And, you know, it's obvious that the cattle suffer, if you're comparing the two, you know, more than the deer that we harvest here on occasion. But yeah, it's not something I like doing. So, you know, I guess some would argue that there's some hypocrisy in there, but the horses, they're just another level with their intelligence. Sure, their history and their heritage and what they've done in the formation of this country, really. But probably above all that is the fact that this, you know, I've done a lot of shooting in my life, and, you know, I consider myself an expert in shooting. The aerial culling cannot be done in a humane fashion, and anyone asserts that it can is simply lying. There's, you know, it's not something that's a subjective argument. It just can't be done. There's only one way to kill a horse and render it insensible with a rifle, and that's, you know, on the ground with the rifle against its head. And yeah, it's just, there's no argument in that aspect of this debate for me whatsoever.
Now, you've been here for 30 years. Sorry about that. I can do that because we're on camera. And
Sometimes it feels like that when I look around and see what I haven't finished.
Well, I was probably here before you.
Yeah.
What do you mean by yeah? Oh, that's just terrible. Look, I just want to know, though, because you've been here for, as we would say, yonks, and that could be any stretch. Tell me how this part of Kosciuszko National Park fared in the last 26 years since its transition. I think it was the Mowanba State Forest to which is now the National Park. How has it changed?
It's actually changed dramatically. I bought this land 36 years ago in 1990, and at that time our boundary on the other side of the river behind us was Mowanba State Forest, and as such the State Forest, you know, managed that. Initially they were going to cut the tall alpine ash that you see over there. But when they started, only a few weeks into it, they determined that it was too wet and that it wasn't really viable, so they hit that on the head. That was in the 80s. But about 10 years after I bought it, around 2000, I had a ranger turn up on the front door here, a nice bloke, and he had a letter to show me, inviting me to, it was their consultation process, inviting me to comment on the proposed transition of this state forest into national park, or Kosciuszko National Park that it is now. And I was quite shocked at the time, and you know, and I asked him how it came about, and to his credit, he was very open. He said that basically it was when Bob Davis was Minister for Environment, and I think it was coming towards the end of his first term from memory, and he'd done a deal with the Greens allegedly to try and ensure that they got a second term. And part of that deal allegedly was that Bob Davis had agreed to, during his next term, or it may have even been the first term, I can't recall, but convert 400,000 hectares or 1 million acres into national park to appease the Greens and I guess assure that he got their votes. He showed me the letter, and it basically said that they were to identify, the national parks were to identify any land, whether it was travelling stock route, crown land, state forest, anything that they could convert that would go towards meeting that obligation. Some might call it a bribe, but that was the the purpose of converting it. And I said to him, is there any identified flora or fauna or anything in there that's needs the protection that would be afforded under the National Park? And he said no. And I noted, knowing a lot more about it now, I know that there is zero endangered or threatened species up there. So then, it was tick the consultation process box, and then of course it just became National Park, and the consequences of that were quite immediate. The first one was that the traditional family that owned this entire valley up until about 87, the McGufficks, they always had the lease on that state forest behind us, what was state forest, and they grazed their cattle there. And I've been coming here since the late 60s when I was a kid with my grandfather, and in those days we used to come up here to whistle foxes for their furs, the days when the pelts were worth money and before the greenies banned it, effectively. But the land in those days, from when I was a young kid in the 60s right up until the national parks took it over, was actually quite well maintained. There was no blackberries, there was no deer. The deer came in after that. But probably more importantly, the fuel loads for fire mitigation just weren't there because the cattle were grazing. But of course, that all stopped immediately. And then ever since, it's just been a downward spiral, just a year-on-year exponential increase in all of those things like blackberries, deer. I could take you for a walk over there. There's parts where the blackberries are 200 metres deep and 6 foot high. So you can't access the river for 200 metres. So, it's... And, people say, oh, that's a bit of a pain, but it's more than that. For example, blackberries are responsible for, according to, the Invasive Species Council's website, the loss of up to 50 native species. And you sort of think, how does a blackberry, affect that? But what the blackberry does is it infests the whole floor, that ground space, and nothing else can get any light in there, so nothing can grow in terms of flora. But then it also does things like it can actually divert the course of the waterway, which of course then causes erosion, So it's something that should be addressed. But when I, look at my river here, there's not a blackberry anywhere, and I spent quite a few years.
Well, I saw you swimming in it before.
Yeah, right. You must have been here when it was a bit warmer. But
no.
Yeah, but we, I've always stayed on top of them because I hate them. And I actually started spraying over the other side into the park, and then I thought, I better be careful, it might be in strife. So I went and seen the boss of the parks, who was Pam O'Brien in those days, and she was a lovely lady. And I said, look, Pam, I'd worked with her as, when I was the emergency management officer, about things like fire mitigation. I said, look, we've got a real problem out there. And it's really only come about since it was National Park. And State Forest used to come here and ask my permission and drive through every year. And she said, oh, look, Brett, I'll be honest. She said, we're never going to have a budget to do any of that sort of thing in your area. And she said, but if you wanted to continue to do it, I can make you an official volunteer of the parks, and we'll even supply you with the poison and so on. So I took up that offer initially. They put me on a one-day course, how to handle pesticides and that, one of their OHS things. And I started spraying, and I did it for quite a few months during that spraying season. But it was every day. After I was working in those days, it was after work, and in the end I thought, oh geez, it's probably not a good thing to be exposed every day to this sort of stuff. So I ended up sort of just giving up. But, in reality, this goes for miles. It wasn't going to make a difference. It was more of a feel-good measure, I guess. And perhaps I thought naively that, it might be a bit of an interim thing. If they saw me doing it, they might sort of divert some funds. But anyway, Yeah, so it really, and I don't want to, I'm not one of the haters of the national parks. There's a lot of good people in there. I don't want to hate on them, but, in fairness, they've been given so much land mass with no additional resources, realistically, and they don't have budgets for this sort of stuff, and this land should never have been under national parks. As I said, there's nothing endangered or threatened in it, but it's a political thing, and as time's gone by, I think there's probably some truth in this 2030 thing where they're trying to get 30% of all land mass and water mass.
They are.
Yeah.
Look at Tasmania.
Yeah.
Already.
Yeah, so, and we're the meat and the sandwich that sort of really, cops it. But yeah, it has deteriorated sadly on what it was, even in recent decades.
What about the ISC, Invasive Species Council, which I've got little time for. I refer to them as bridge gluers because that's what they used to do, I'm sure, glue themselves to roads at the entrance to Sydney Harbour. So we have the ISC who have, because of Jack Goff, who's the lobbyist from way back, and he knows how to play the game. And he is playing the game and playing it well, considering their objectives. What's your thoughts on the ISC, the Invasive Species Council, and their determination in how Australia should be? I mean, I understand that they want to take us back to pre-Captain Cook, but why stop at that? Why not go back to the dinosaurs? We used to, you and I had some pet dinosaurs in our day. Yeah. We're that old. But I mean, truly, and so therefore, an unelected group of people with 130 members are basically determining our direction, and government is listening to them. How do we, first of all, address that, and what do we do about it?
Well, it's very difficult because, if it was if there was an investigation and it was a lot more transparent, we'd probably be all over pretty quick, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. I actually personally don't believe that the people like Jack Goff or those people around him have any real true appreciation or love for the environment. I'm sure they'd argue that vehemently, but
he would call it, one of his videos on TV, bullshit.
Yeah. Well,
good.
I think. I mean, I think Blind Freddie can see that it's all about political, lobbying and self-interest. It's these people don't come up here. They might come up for a field trip once a year, or they don't have that, that deep-seated love for the environment that we do. People that have grown up in it, and that doesn't mean we're any better as people, but no one knows the mountains better than the people that live here. And we don't have any, financial motivation or any sort of reason other than the love of the land to actually want to protect it. And the exact opposite is the case for them. It's all about, for the politicians, it's ensuring that they get those people that subscribe to the ISC views to vote for Labor in this instance, or the Greens, but predominantly Labor. And, from people at his level, it's about, these jobs and what it brings them. And, I don't know if he's intending to go into politics at the end of all this or whether he has other aspirations, but, and then, you've got the scientists, their research, their continued existence with research grant funding and things like that. It all depends on this perpetual, science, as they call it, to support their cause, to lobby the government for their continued existence. The amount of jobs that these and departments, and the millions and perhaps billions of dollars that are generated by this sort of narrative that the environment's all about to explode and we're all going to, either flood or blow up or whatever.
That's right.
It's a
nice knowing you.
Yeah, it's. I've been coming in nearly 60 years, and the weather hasn't changed at all.
No, it hasn't. But
I'm not saying I'm climate change denier. I'm, You know, I know there's cycles and it's changing at the moment. I think I look at the glaciers around the world and I see that I've been to them and I've seen that they are retreating, but it doesn't automatically follow that we're going to have these climate disasters or climate extremes. We're just... Anyway, that's another argument. But I think their motivation is not sincere. And as for the peer-reviewed science and so on, it's like me saying to you, you know, do you agree with what I'm saying? And you write it down and then it's peer-reviewed. You know, it's a nonsense. And I studied environmental science, and you know, in those days you were taught to challenge the science. You don't just accept it. Good science is challenging it and testing it. Today, someone from the ANU gets up and says horses eat horses, and everyone believes it. Or they say that they're mangy, you know, ribs sticking out, mongrel-looking things, and people believe it. They don't go up there and have a look and see that they're absolutely stunning, you know, horses in beautiful condition. And I think probably my biggest gripe with the ISC, what they've done in achieving the means of, you know, of getting this aerial culling approved and done, you know, they've claimed that the horses endanger up to 12. That was Jack Goff's statement in the media, that they endanger up to 12 native species. Well, foxes, you know, damage up to 149 native species.
149?
149.
Wow.
They're directly responsible for the extinction of 16 native species in Australia, predominantly mammals.
And chickens.
Yeah. You know, they kill 300 million native wildlife every year. So why is you know, and they've made up this word called whataboutism. I don't know what university student or Jack Goff or whoever made it, this whataboutism, when you bring up this argument. And the argument is, why are you prioritising something? You know, pigs. I think they're 95 species, and 95 species a year, I think, feral pigs cause. There's 200 million of them on the last estimate in Australia. And when you bring this argument up and say, okay, how come you're targeting and spending 95% of the National Park's pest management budget on Brumbies, who by your own admissions are responsible for the loss of, or endangering, they're actually not responsible for the loss of one, and they haven't given any evidence. They're saying that they are threatening, which is a whole lower level, up to 12 species. When you've got something like a fox who's directly responsible for, you know, 149 species, in other words, 12 times the amount, and yet your allocation of, or your attention in the media is not based at, you know, not directed towards foxes or pigs or blackberry, you know, 50 species for blackberry, but it's a horse that hasn't been proven to endanger or threaten one species. So it sort of says to me that the ISC is all about ideology and nothing really to do with environmental damage. And I think, I mean, I'm sure they'd probably admit they're ashamed of our colonial heritage. And there's so much evidence in the things that they do and say that they want to try and erase that heritage.
Yeah, we get you know, the trolls come out and send us.
Yeah.
You'll learn these things as you become more familiar with electricity. Sorry about that. Okay, we are sort of pushed for a bit of time. If you were, say, a Prime Minister for the day,
God forbid.
God, yes, I was just thinking,
although I couldn't do a worse
a bit like a Stephen King novel on steroids.
We've got in there at the moment, yeah.
Free beer for everybody, and how would you fix it? I mean, because I think this is probably where the federal government should be doing a little more. If you look at Chris Bowen and Murray, as one of our guests calls him, Murray the Toad What? Because wherever he goes, he destroys the environment. And he's the Environment Minister. But how would you fix it? If you had the
National Park?
Yeah, the National Park. I mean, can't do Australia, it's too much.
I've thought a lot about it. The first thing I'd do is prioritise the pest that's responsible for the most damage.
Okay, that's the IFC, Invasive Species Council. That's the pest.
Well, I think they...
But they are. They're destroying the environment. I mean...
Yeah, well...
Anyway.
But, speaking sensibly about what I do, the first thing I do is look at simple measures like trialling. And ACT and the National National Park have actually started doing this on a very small scale. But trialling small-scale cattle grazing again. And that's, if you looked at what causes the most environmental damage, it's these catastrophic fires that we've had, like the one in 2002-3 that came right over the hill here. Fires have to have fuel. Without fuel, they don't exist. So first thing I do is trial some cattle grazing. I would look at permit systems in areas like this where there's 0 endangered species, flora or fauna, and have firewood collection like they used to do in the national parks. Not on a commercial scale, but on a scale that allows people to go in and get what is predominantly a renewable energy source. So you're saving the use of gas or electricity, and you're also doing the environment a favour by removing firewood from areas where there's too much of it. And we have massive snowstorms, metre deep here and high winds and that, so there's stuff coming down all the time. Then I'd look at, things like with the foxes, a bounty program where you say, in the old days, in the 1970s, we were getting $55 a pelt. 2 pelts was a week's wages.
Jeepers.
And, and we were just whistling them. We weren't shooting or anything, weren't spotlighting or anything. We made bed rugs out of them, we made hats, we made gloves. Mum, my grandmother all had full-length fox coats. It was a great use of the resource. And I love foxes. I photograph them in the snow. I think they're an incredible animal. But they, unlike Brumbies, they do actually cause massive environmental damage. So you have to kill them. There's some things that, it's just best that they're not there sort of things. So put a bounty on them, whether it's $10 a tail, $20 a tail, whatever. Do what Chris Min said, allow hunting in the Kosciuszko National Park.
Incredible.
I don't know where he came up with that.
Sorry, that's incredible.
Yeah, well, it's indicative of the level of advice, the quality advice he's getting from his policy.
Could you imagine that? A couple of drinks, a couple of beers, get the blood flowing properly. Oh, is that a fox? Or is that who cares?
Yeah.
I mean, truly.
Well, hopefully it'll be a bit more sort of,
Be good luck on that one.
Yeah. But you could take your belt-fed shotgun up there or something and get more if they actually existed. But
12 gauge.
But just simple measures like that to and as for the Brumbies, there's areas where they're beneficial. I don't care what the IC says or any of the other extremists. There is clearly areas where their presence increases the quality of the environment, and whether it's through fuel management of the grass, whether it's through their manure. Any gardener will tell you horse manure is the best fertiliser you can ever get. So I wouldn't want them in sensitive areas. I wouldn't want them to get up to numbers where they actually cause damage to creek beds and things like that, because they do, if they're allowed to get to those ridiculous numbers, which are still probably a tenth, if that, of what they actually claim. But if they get too concentrated in one area, like anything, they'll cause damage. But historically, these local people, the McGufficks, the Penders, the Barrys, the Thompsons, all that, they went up there and they pulled a few out every year. And they're great stock horses, great ponies for the kids, but sensible management. And I think, that would go a long way to sort of sorting out the problems. But I just can't see it happening because, these Muppets that are in there at the moment, they just...
they do what Muppets do.
They've got no idea.
No, they haven't. We have to move on to we've got 432 guests today. There's a busload coming, just to keep me out of mischief. Can you just tell me, because we're at Moomba Huts, and this is one of them, there's 2 on the property. You don't need you can get here without a 4-wheel drive, because I wasn't in 4-wheel driving.
You could have got in here in your Mazda MX-5. You were a bit tougher too.
probably could have. I'm just some of those ravines they call potholes. They were very deep. But if somebody wants to find out more about this, truly, this is a magnificent part of Australia. I mean, it sort of takes my breath away. My wife, who always likes to be around civilization, said, I could live here. And that's our next thing. We'll take this place now, just sign the dotted line.
Not enough money in the world, mate.
Don't
Only
be like
way
that.
I'm ever leaving here is in a box.
That would Jack Goff would organise it for you.
No, it wouldn't be a good idea for him.
I mean, truly, he's just a bully. So if somebody wants to find out more about, though, the Moonbar huts, how do they do that?
Mate, this website, just Moonbar Huts.
What's the rest of it? Moonbar Huts, what, dot?
.com.au, just I think, or maybe just .com. I'm not sure.
Just put Moonbar Huts in.
Yeah, if you type that in, it comes up. But probably the Facebook page is the best. It's we post on there. Every time we get a big dump of snow or something happens.
I saw that the other day.
Yeah,
a bit cool for my liking.
You Queenslanders.
Don't be like that.
How'd you go in the State of Origin?
I didn't. I don't follow that. It's a stupid game. I mean, I'm sorry. I love the game. Sorry, but I'm an AFL supporter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I weep all the time with my side plays. But so they just go online and put in Moonbar Huts.
Yeah, it'll come up. Yeah.
But it's truly a magnificent part of the world.
Thank you, mate. Yeah.
And I really appreciate your time. This is the Country Telegraph.
The king may rule over land and sea. The lord may live right royally. The soldier ride in pomp and pride. The sailor roam over ocean wide. But this or that, whatever befall, the farmer, he must feed them all. The writer thinks, the poet sings, the craftsman fashion wondrous things. The doctor heals, the lawyer pleads, the miner follows, the precious leads. But this or that, whatever befall, the farmer, he must feed them all. The merchant, he may buy and sell, the teacher do his duty well. But men may toil through busy days, or men may stroll through pleasant ways. From king to beggar, whatever befall, the farmer, he must feed them all. The farmer's trade is one of worth. He's partner with the sky and earth. He's partner with the sun and rain, and no man loses for his gain. And men may rise, or men may fall, but the farmer, he must feed them all. God bless the man who sows the wheat, who finds us milk and fruit and meat. May his purse be heavy, his heart be light, his cattle and corn and all go right. God bless the seeds his hands let fall. For the farmer, he must feed us all.
The snowy mountains, a vast, untamed wilderness where, for over 2 centuries, a remarkable creature has carved out a life against the harsh realities of nature. The wild Brumbie. These majestic herds, bonded by blood and fierce loyalty, are a living piece of our heritage. They wake with the sun, navigating the rugged terrain with a grace that has come to define the very spirit of the high country. But today, the silence of this sanctuary is broken. not by the forces of nature, but by the hand of man. A shadow has fallen over Kosciuszko. A 3-month aerial shooting campaign has begun. Imagine the terror, driven from the shelter of the bush by quad bikes, forced directly into the open and into the firing line of helicopters. These family units running to the point of utter exhaustion, desperate to protect their young, only to face an agonizing end. Trapping operations have been halted, humane rehoming efforts silenced. This is no longer management. It is a tragedy unfolding in the heart of our wilderness. Around the world, other nations have found another way. Humane alternatives exist, paths of compassion that respect both the land and the lives within it. Millions of dollars, now spent on eradication, could instead fund a gentler, more civilized future. The heritage of these wild horses cannot be reduced to a line item in a budget. The world is watching. We cannot let silence stand for cruelty. The Australian Labor government must hear our collective voice before the high country falls permanently silent. Stand for those who cannot speak for themselves.
Give a hoot, don't pollute our great oceans. We must remove these garbage wind turbines that threaten our wildlife and fisheries.
And welcome back to the Country Telegraph. I'm Mike Ryan. My next guest is Shannon Byrne, who's a local alpine horseman with a magnificent hat. Not sure if he smokes that stuff around it, though. We'll have to find out later on. He's a descendant of one of the first European settlers in the snowy Monaro region. Shannon is an expert on horses, having trained Brumbies through to Group 1 racehorses. He also knows the Australian bush and the Brumbies very well, having grown up with them. Shannon, thanks for joining us.
No worries, thanks for having us, Mike.
Tell me, you're just, because last time I spoke, you were not impressed at all with what's happening. What's your, now that we're next to each other, tell me how you really feel about the culling of these magnificent creatures.
It's an atrocious act, Mike. If people really seen what goes on out here, they'd have a whole different view of aerial culling. We see it every time there's an aerial cull on, whether it's horses, pigs, deer. We see the aftermath of it that the other people don't see. And as I say, if they seen that, they'd be on board with banning aerial culling as a control method for any species.
It's actually pretty. I mean, it is invasive, and we have the Invasive Species Council, led by the bearded wonder Jack Goff. Terrible name, Jack Goff, because Australians sort of run words together, and it becomes quite what we're all thinking, Jack Off.
Some of them are quite fitting.
That's right. This is a family show. But tell me about the Invasive Species Council. How long have they been on the scene in the Kosciuszko National Park?
Well, they've only come on relatively strongly the last, say, 2 or 3 years. Pretty much after Andrew Cox got out of it. Mm-hmm. Then that's when Jack Goff stepped into it and ramped it up. Jack being a professional lobbyist, he hasn't got any other skills or strong points beside his name. Bar he's a manipulator of the truth. Jack, he's...
Tell us about some of the... Because I totally agree with you, by the way. Tell us about some of the misconceptions or the... Jack goes on about, these people are just the wackos that, stood against the lockdowns. And tell me where, Jack, the lockdown was, as any government said, it was exactly what was needed. I think the only place was China. And even then, they didn't like it at the end either, this conspiracy, which is a global conspiracy. But, Jack, you talk about always the misinformation, we're spreading. Shannon, tell us about the reverse role, the reverse of the misinformation.
I'll start with something that which is pretty close to the heart. He said only here a few weeks ago, Brumby running is torture. Well, it's not torture. Done properly by skilled people, as the local people here are at catching Brumbies. It's probably the most humane method. And it's actually here on Section 6 in the original Wild Horse Management Plan put out by Kosciuszko National Park. And but Jack's twisted it now, saying that National Parks barred it in 1982. Well, they didn't bar Brumby running in 1982. They barred horse riding in 1982 because the area was turned into a wilderness area. But what's happened in that time, Jack's twisted that narrative to suit his agenda by saying that it was cruel, it was torturous. So that was just one of them. The other one is, you know, he talks about the environment and this and that. And as I've got a few photos here, Mike, you can just see there.
Yes, just up at the camera.
This is Tantangra Dam when it's. Wait on, go back to the start here. Sorry about the paperwork here.
That's right.
But well, anyway, I'll bugger this up in a second.
That's right.
But
we're getting there.
Anyway, this is Tantangra Dam when it's empty. That's it there.
Yep.
So what they'll do, Jack and his mates will come in and they'll show you the horse prints all through here, and they put all this down as horse damage. But then when you come back, that's what it looks like after the water's gone. It starts to green up, and you get the horses on it. But and then within it could be a day or two, that whole dam is underwater again. So Jack will manipulate that narrative. They'll take photos of certain areas where things look bad. But if you went a mile up from Tantangra Dam, it's as good as what you'll find. But the other thing is, he'll tell people where it comes down to two choices with Jack. It's either kill it or save it. He will not look at other management options, to which there's several, you know, but he gives people the impression there's only two options: either kill to save it. Well, we as locals have never had a problem with management, and we've acknowledged quite often that yes, everything needs management, but there's humane ways to manage it, where Jack puts it down as a life or death situation. Now, without horses in that park, or park doing their job and doing a lot of hazard reduction burns, you're going to end up with something very similar to this here. Now, this is the lower Snowy after the 2003 fires. The rains come. Not only did it annihilate everything in its path, which killed off millions of flora and fauna of all things, but you're left with the aftermath of the silt, the runoff, the whole lot coming down the streams. Now, Jack won't show you this stuff because it goes against his agenda. And that was one of the biggest arguments with the Invasive Species Council. Their master is at manipulating the truth. And when it comes down to it, he's manipulating the truth. He's a compulsive liar, really. And people don't see this stuff. So they think, oh, well, Jack's thing, and he uses the excuse all the time that's science-based.
It's a bit like climate change.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and
we're going to freeze, boil.
It's the only study that was ever done on horses was back in the 90 and 92 by a woman called Jennifer Dyring, and that was in a very small area that could be accessed by foot at the tin mines. That's the only study, but Jack will tell you, no, we've got scientific evidence. But end of the day, they got none. And people listen to him like he's telling reading from the Bible itself.
And the other thing too is to sway public opinion, because what he's doing is, it is a, many call it an information operation, propaganda. And so what you do is to nudge people, the general populace to a particular way of thinking. I mean, nudging is part of it. You throw in terms such as feral. So these wild horses, wild has this romantic feel to it, that we all would like to be outdoors and having freedom and whatever. That's what wild connotates, which is true. Then you have feral. Now, feral is bad in every way. And if you say those feral horses, which they do, they really make the feral part stand out
Yeah.
and sound terrible. So the nudging or the propaganda. Tell me, if go back 10 years, if I said to you that's a bloody feral horse, would you give me a box in the ears just about?
I don't know about boxing in there, Mike, but
Thank you.
But you probably wouldn't get much more out of us after that.
Not
anyway.
a beer, not even a beer.
No, you wouldn't be welcome at the fire. Put it that way.
Good on you.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking though, the terminology used by, whether it's Chris Menz, Penny Sharp, Chris Menz, who wants to go hunting in the park, by the way, get rid of every bloody horse you can. Oh, that looked like a horse. Oh well, it wasn't. It was my neighbour.
Yeah.
But anyway, don't worry about that part. So there you got Penny Sharp, and you got Jack Goff, and all these invasive species members, which I refer to as bridge gluers, because
Yep.
they used to glue themselves to Sydney Harbour Bridge. They're the sort of ones that are part of this organisation. They are really painting a bad picture, though, and the bulk of Australians are, as we would say, are drinking the Kool-Aid and they're believing it. How do we cut through that? How do we get? I mean, you are an expert. You know the area. You know the high plains. You know horses. Surely that people should be listening to what you're saying because you have that experience, knowledge, that education.
You'd like to think it'd work that easy, Mike, but it doesn't. When they've got the backing of the government, national parks, it's easy for them to put out that propaganda. And, when we say something, they're just hillbillies, old bushfellas, And once again, that's how, they use that narrative to
denigrate you.
Yeah, and discredit what your thoughts are. Now, when you look at, say, someone like the Invasive Species Council, it's, I don't know, do you remember the Muppet Show when we were kids?
I did.
That's pretty
Those
much...
two old ones at the top.
Yeah, it's pretty much the Muppet Show.
What, that's us? We're that old.
But it's the Muppet Show in 2026.
Isn't that fantastic? But it's very sad. If it wasn't so serious, it'd be hilarious.
Yeah.
Muppet Jack.
Yeah, Muppet Jack and Muppet Richard. So
let me go. I just want to go take you back a bit. I want to take you back. Sit back, relax, watch this ding, ding, ding. Tell me about, and we have to be a bit careful here, tell me about what you know about Richard Swain and Andrew Cox. Now, I've said a lot about that, and truly, I'm not going to say much. I'll let you do it. But tell me, what do we know about Richard Swain and Andrew Cox?
Well, there's a lot I
it's a
I
family
do,
show.
Yeah, a lot I do know about Richard Swain.
Mm-hmm.
He went to the same school as me.
Did he?
Back in the day, yeah.
Did you punch him?
Nah.
Don't. It's a family show. I was just inquiring for his safety.
Back then, he was, it surprised me that he'd come out the way he has come out, and probably the thing that's the most annoying with Richard Swain is him being a Wiradjuri man that speaks on the Garigo country, which if you was fair dinkum bloke, you'd know that you don't, and you followed that tribal way of life. Well, it's a no-no. You don't go onto other people's land and speak and run ceremonies as such. But apart from that, he hasn't got a great record in the local community.
But he's very good friends with the ISC.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I can see that so that goes back to Andrew Cox's day. They've identified him as, well, we can use him, and that's what they've done pretty much. They've picked the dumbest sheep in the mob, and they've used him to push the propaganda and all the corruption, unbeknown to Richard. You can't see past his nose sometimes, but anyways, that's where he is. But
Andrew Cox,
he wasn't cut out for the job, really. He's a weak man. Very weak man when you go back and look at some of the stuff. And that's where I think Jack stepped in because, well, I thought he was a bit tougher, but apparently he's having a fair whinge that they're getting called names and whatnot on social media.
Our first broadcast, someone wrote in, I know who it is, I won't mention it, said, we want you to, they did, cross my heart, hope to die. We want you to call Jack on this number immediately and take your program off. We're on various platforms. Take it off those platforms immediately. We haven't. And I feel terrible that someone went to the effort to threaten us, because we had free speech.
Yeah, well, it's a free country, mate. We'll speak as we like. And the only thing Jack needs to do is go and have a shot of concrete and harden up a bit. He's we've copped that stuff all our life.
We have. I haven't. Look at these hands.
Yeah.
I just that they haven't seen much concrete. Let me tell you that.
Yeah. No, that's what old Jack.
But they have held big glasses of whiskey at times, and they're
we've
taken a battery.
We've all held a good glass of whiskey at times.
Yes, I know it's been a bit. I've had to because I've been working very hard. You see, and I have to be very careful on the amount of whiskey I have for breakfast. I mean, I have at night time. What do you know about the Bogong High Plains? Because there are no horses there, I believe, and if we're down to very few numbers of Brumbies, 800 or less, as Peter Cochrane alluded to a couple of weeks ago, if we have another cull, and it would be quite feasible if we have low numbers to get down to almost the zero amount of, there'll be a few around, but not a whole lot of horses around. How do you think that will not benefit the like, for example, with the Kosciuszko National Park? You've seen the Bogong High Plains.
Yep.
When the horses, now that they've gone, basically, tell me about what it does to the terrain, how it, because I hear from many that it goes backwards, becomes a fire trap and all sorts of things like that. Tell me your thoughts that if we don't have any Brumbies in the Kosciuszko National Park, where we'll be at?
We'll be in a very dire situation.
You're going to say up shit creek without a paddle.
But,
I just did it for you.
Well, see, horses, their digestive system's set up, they eat a lot of roughage.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think on an average, the average horse will eat, anywhere 5 or 6 tonne of roughage a year.
Mm.
So if you've got them horses, that's eating a lot of that roughage. Now, a prime example of, if people want to see this, and once again we'll go back to the invasive species, back in the Victorian side there was a lot of trial plots put in, little fenced off areas where the cattle couldn't get to, but the natives could, the kangaroo, the wallaby, the wombat.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've got deer all through that country in plague proportions, but none of them are eating that. And the deer can hop in, skip in and out there as they please. But none of it's eating that grass because it's gone rank and stagnant, and nothing's living in there. There's no frogs in there. And just outside there you'll hear frogs croaking, but you won't hear nothing. No birds nesting. There's nothing. No,
those birds have croaked it.
Yeah. So what'll happen if they was to let the whole of Kosciuszko National Park grow grass, 1 or 2 feet high, the next fire that comes through, like it's a ticking time bomb as it is now. So without anything eating the grass, it'll reach that level, and it'll once again, another fire will probably transform these mountains to irreparable damage. They'll never be the same mountains, same ecosystem again. Because there's areas here now that have changed forever again now, from the 2003 fires and the 2019, 2020 fires. But it's not part of the agenda, Mike, so they lock it up to their pristine wilderness,
Do you despair? Do you just despair over this? Do you sit there and go, what's happened to this world?
Oh, I sit back quite often, Mike, and well, even here, I was just up here on this ridge here on Saturday having a poke around, and I just think to myself, like, it goes through your mind, Mike, a lot. What's changed in the, say the 55, 60 years since the cattle have gone out, and this is apparently verging on extinction, and this is on the verge of extinction, and this is on the endangered list. And well, when the cattle went out and the bushmen went out, you took the caretakers away from the land. Now, they learnt over time, and a lot of those, especially the burning off and the fire, like the hazard reductions, were learnt off the Indigenous people back in the day. So what's changed to put us in this position? And what's changed to put us in this position is national parks have come in and took it all over and locked everything up with no management. That is the thing that just keeps sticking out at me is they're responsible for all this. And you talk about despair because, you sit back and you might roll the smoke on a log and have a look about and you think, they've just completely ruined this country. For what was once a beautiful area, they've trashed it. And all under this flawed science, propaganda, they're totally, and them themselves, no one else are responsible for the state of the national park. And to me, that's what's changed. You know, like, apart from the Snowy scheme and Snowy 2.0, where the whole hydrology's been changed to the mountains and everything as well, but since all that come, that's when everything slowly started declining, and it's, you know, you got these endangered species, you've got endangered flora. Well, that's all come since the national parks have took over. And, you know, and the tourist industry's boomed way out of proportion. And it's all these other impacts that now are being overlooked, or they mightn't be overlooked, but the old Brumbie that's been here for 180 years, he's a scapegoat.
I think it's, I've never seen such a lack of respect. And I think that's probably one of the key issues that we don't have at the moment is respect. And the new breed with the ISC and ministers and stuff, they dislike our history and our heritage so much that they're going to try and rewrite the books. And I just look at those magnificent creatures and who are, I mean, I am not a horse person. Sometimes the throat gets a bit sore, but I'm not a horse person. But they are majestic animals, and they have been part of civilization since Adam was a boy. And to treat them that way, and you see them just, you know, after they're shot, I've had some very bad nights' sleep, lack of sleep, because that is not how we should act. And so I think Australia at the moment, you need to take a good look at yourself, because Australians don't turn their back on their mates. And people say, oh, they're a horse feral. They're not feral. They fought in our wars, and they are as much a part of this landscape and this country as you or me. And we need to show respect. We need to come to our senses and show Australia that this is not how Australians act. And I think people like yourself, you can see what's happening to this country. And whereas things used to be simple, they are no longer simple anymore. Everything is convoluted and smoke mirrors, and it's my truth and your truth and their truth. No such thing as my truth, your truth and their truth. It's either the fact, which is the truth, or it's just an opinion. And we don't need just opinions dictating the future and the direction of this country, do we?
No, not at all.
It's a terrible way to treat animals, first of all, but terrible way to treat Australians. Shannon, if somebody wants to find out more about you, I always do this to people, and they go, "What? Tell me, do you have a website? Do you have a Facebook page?"
No,
I knew that would happen.
I've got a Facebook page, but
tell us about it. If somebody wants to go there.
No, there's nothing really on there, Mike. I keep it pretty much just to myself and me mates. And
a couple of you on horses, or?
Oh, there's a couple of pictures there on a pony or something, but
all right.
But the one I say is either follow, you know, to get an insight into what we're about down here and what we're doing. Either go on to the Park Off page.
That's a good one.
Or the Snowy Mountains Horse Riders Association page, you know, and that'll give you a good look at what we're about down here and what we've been fighting for a lot of years. Yeah.
Shannon, you have been magnificent. I appreciate your time coming out to the Moonbar Huts, and it's fantastic here. It's magnificent.
Spot,
The wife wanted to stay here, but there was nothing because Brett heard about us and said, "I'm not having you guys here. You won't make the bed." But I have to say, it's just a gorgeous part of the world. We're back here again on Thursday, I think it is, because Jen, our producer, if she knew that we had a 4-wheel drive, she would have had us at the top of the mountain. I can see that one sticking out a mile. But it's just fantastic talking with you, and I think we do need to show a lot more respect and take pride in our history and our heritage, because without acknowledging our history and our heritage, I've got to tell you, the future doesn't look so bright at all, does it?
No, she's a pretty bleak outlook if we keep going down the track we're on.
Yeah, and we're doing that at a rapid rate. This is the Country Telegraph.
Outback Queensland. It's stepping back about 100 million years.
It's soaking in the surrounds.
It's wide open for adventure.
It's where dinner puts up a fight.
And it's your round for new stories. It's switching on easy mode and a whole lot of incredible.
Outback Queensland. It's something else. Book your holiday now.
Australian made means made right here in Australia. But it's more than just where it's made. It means made by Australians, backing local businesses and jobs. Made for the way we live, right here. It's why buying Australian made just feels right. Australian made, made right here.
Convert is an Australian manufacturer of high-quality biological inputs. Our mission is to accelerate the transition of agriculture to a more sustainable and low-carbon industry that produces higher quality nutritious outputs. We manufacture scientifically formulated products targeting soil restoration, seed germination, plant health and animal well-being. Our products are carefully crafted to help farmers grow sustainably with profitability in mind. Independent PhD research on our products conducted at the Western Sydney University showed significant increases in soil biology, nutrient availability and cycling, root growth, fruiting and flowering, drought resistance, and overall plant resilience and yield. These products have also been thoroughly tested across a range of crops in Australian conditions. These include wheat, barley, oats, cotton, cannabis, glasshouse lettuce, pastures, vineyards and orchards. Convert's products can be used via boom spray, drip irrigation or fertigation and does not relinquish farmers' existing trusted practices. Export has been a large focus of our company's positioning as our products are packaged in super concentrated formulations ideal for shipping and handling with minimal water and environmental costs. Convert is expanding into international markets with a focus on regenerative agriculture and the future of farming.
And we're back again. This is the Country Telegraph doing it from Jindabyne in the Moomba hut. It's absolutely fantastic right now. I've picked a great day. The sun was shining before. Now we're about to have... It's very cold, to say the least, but I'm a whip, so that's okay. Now, just before we get into our next guest, the results of Monday's poll, yesterday for those that have slept in, the question was, if a federal election were to be held today, how would you vote? As I cough. That's better. One Nation, by the way, had the highest support across age groups, genders and states in this poll, showing strong engagement from respondents from 60 to 69. Females and participants from New South Wales, the Liberal and National parties also had some support, but were less dominant compared to One Nation. Pauline doing her rounds of the UK. Unfortunately for Pauline, that they can't vote for her, so she probably should come back and do her job here. The majority of respondents, 66.7%, favoured the One Nation party, followed by the Liberal Party with 20.83% and the National Party with 12.5%. No respondents chose Labor, Greens, United Australia or none of the above. Now, Leisa Caldwell, as a former member of the Kosciuszko National Park Wild Horse Heritage Community Advisory Panel, say that 6 times, representing the local horsemen, and have also served on previous NPWS Wild Horse Committees since 2000. Now, Leisa was also a witness at the parliamentary inquiry on aerial shooting of horses. Leisa has lived neighbouring Kosciuszko for over 45 years. Her husband's family were first settlers here since the early 1800s, with grazing leases in what is now Kosciuszko National Park. Her family has been involved in managing the Brumbies for several generations. The local horsemen have managed the horses for well over 150 years, but have been prohibited since the 1980s. Now, they have they're highly skilled and know the area, know the horses, have offered to take back the management of the Brumbies, and again have been just knocked back by the powers to be. First of all, Leisa, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Mike.
Tell me about your thoughts on this abomination at the moment.
It's really hard to put my thoughts into a few words, to be frank, because it is an abomination and it's affecting a lot of local people greatly. They say, oh, it's emotional, but, well, it is emotional because this is our heritage that they're hijacking and destroying. Because it's not just the horses, it's our whole history and heritage and identity.
Yeah, it's incredible, and these magnificent creatures, just by referring to them as feral, denigrates the majestic prowess of these horses. How do you feel when you hear these ferals? Do you often think of the horses, or is it more the ISC?
It's the ISC and their cohort pretty much these days. Yeah, I've never thought of the horses as feral, to be honest. It's a derogatory term.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's terrible.
And I don't know, I was just brought up thinking that it means a monster.
And that's what it does in many Australians' minds, and that's why they do it. You know, it's the propaganda they spread to get the sway of opinion, and that's when Jack Goff talks about the misinformation being spread by, all those people that were not in support of the lockdowns. It's not us with the misinformation. It is actually the government, led by Penny Sharp, and her offsider being Chris Minns, because that's what it seems like, and Jack Goff, who's advising both of them how to stuff up Australia.
Yeah, well, it's a psychological brainwashing, in a sense, and yeah, I think our ancestors would be rolling in their graves. It feels like we're living in a dystopian society.
Have they ever the horse, the Brumbie horse, has it ever been considered an environmental threat?
Well, not until the last 5 or 6 years.
And that's when the I call them bridge gluers came into a bit of power. They have the ears of that particular government. We know the agenda of the Labor Party. They wish to take us back before dinosaurs, because no more electricity. You've got to have wind. If there's a wind drought, you have no wind, and so the turbines don't work. And the solar panels, well, you can destroy good land, but the solar panels still doesn't cut the cake. So their agenda, if they have the right person in the ear of them, their agenda is often realised, because they can do what they like, because you got this. First of all, the information from the Invasive Species Council is flawed in all parts of it, and it's how you, and we all do it at times. We sometimes will twist something to suit us, but this is twisted to not just suit what they want to do. It's twisted to kill off the Brumbie, destroy what we know of Australia, and take us back to almost the prehistoric times, at least the times of prior to Captain Cook landing here.
Well, that's true. It's been an agenda that's been by stealth, I think, throughout most of my lifetime. They slowly kicked us out in the 80s, which stopped us from managing the horses, even though they admitted at the time that we were in fact managing and controlling the numbers. And it's just got worse and worse. And I think, it must be something to do with the Agenda 2030, because they seem to have all of a sudden got in a hurry. Whereas back in the early 2000s, all they asked of us was they actually asked us to help them get rid of, move some horses that were up in high alpine areas, and we conceded, absolutely, they shouldn't be in those areas, they should be kept horse-free. So we did that as volunteers for them, and then the 2003 fires came and things changed, and their horses, at the time they were not going to remove horses anywhere else. It was only focused on the high alpine areas, which, like I say, we agreed. But then after the fires, everything changed, and I don't really understand why, but they just kept trapping and they didn't want us involved anymore. And now we're treated like the enemy.
How disappointing is that?
It's really sad, because we're a small community. But I think today, with what's happening, I don't think even national parks back then would have dreamt what they are doing today. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of staff, even in management, would be embarrassed and ashamed. But, of course, they're controlled from the hierarchy in Sydney and Hurstville, and they do as they're told.
And they have to, otherwise they won't have a job. And we understand that. But I look at and I truly, at times now, I steer clear of some of the imagery, because you don't need to see the imagery to understand the damage is done to a particular being, that being the horse. But the cruelness, or the lack of empathy, or the care of an animal, such as the horse, which is not feral, how disturbing is that? Because we have Jack Goff, and we have the ISC and others baying for blood, and they want the horses gone forever. And you see the imagery of these beautiful animals contorted, and I won't go anymore, but it's just terrible. Ashley Avers, who's been attacked, unfortunately, but by some of those who are supporting the stop the cull. So we understand that they're coming from a good place, but all these people are shocked though with what they're seeing. How does it affect you? Because it's just, I don't know how you can handle it. You know these animals.
Over the last week or two, we've had helicopters flying over our house almost daily, and half a dozen times a day going back to refuel, and it certainly triggers my PTSD. I can't imagine what it must do for other people that live nearby with veterans that have returned or something like that, alone, without even seeing any of the horses. But I think that it's out of sight, out of mind for those other people. They don't have to see it. They're just getting a job done, and they're getting paid to do that job, I guess.
When they say they need to fix the environment, we've got to get rid of the horses because of the corroboree frog or the left-legged lesbian grasshopper or something, I don't know. I mean, here's the thing, Jack, you may not understand this, that when Captain Cook got here, there was no other white folk here, or that we know of anyway. And since then, you know, through time, hundreds of years, we've progressed. And things, you know, we brought in horses because if we didn't have horses, you wouldn't have this country at the moment. And then we had electricity, which may shock him. And all sorts of, you know, fandangled contraptions came in. That's just called, I mean, I suppose, progress or evolution. And the horse has been here for over 150 years. And much to your horror, Jack, the horse is as much part of the Kosciuszko National Park as any other living being. Because I think after a certain time, if I went to Jindabyne or I moved into Jindabyne, I think after 150 years, they would regard my family living there as locals. And these horses are locals. They're part and parcel of the environment here. They are not doing the damage that you are purporting to, and it is absolute lies. When you hear these lies, how do you feel?
Oh, frustrated, because they keep targeting the horses, and I've said numerous times, you know, on Facebook and other social media that, okay, if the horses are causing so much problems, let's get rid of the trout, let's get rid of all the ski resorts and the highways and the sewage spills and the diesel spills and everything else that goes with the 2 million tourists that come here every year, not to mention Snowy too. And when you get rid of all that or start focusing on that, well, then we can concentrate on the horses, because there has not been any robust, rigorous scientific studies to show that they are doing any damage, let alone what they're claiming. Sure, they have impacts, no one doubts that, but they have mitigations in place for all these other impacts. Why not the horses when they are so important? And it's not just us saying they're important. The national parks themselves were the ones that commissioned the heritage assessment on these horses back in 2015. And they were the ones that stated that the horses met 5 out of 9 criteria to meet national heritage significance. The only reason they're not heritage listed as such is because they're a living animal, and they supposedly can't list an animal, a living animal. Whereas if you were trying to heritage list a house, whether it be at council, local government level, state level or national level, you only have to meet 1 criteria out of this 9 to get your house heritage listed. But with the horses, they met 5 on the national assessment. So clearly they do have heritage value, major heritage value. I mean, you only have to think about all the literature and arts and you know, the Outback Spectacular, the Man from Snow River Spectacular that went around Australia, the Corryong Festival that's been going for 30-something years, the Man from Snow River movies, etc., etc. There is so much of that to demonstrate that they are an icon in Australia and part of Australia's psyche. We all grew up learning that kind of thing, and this is what they're trying to hijack and destroy. And I don't understand why, and I think probably their first target is to get rid of the horses. They're brainwashing the kids at school about all of this stuff to say that they're feral and they're damaging, when there is no actual scientific evidence stating that, particularly in comparison to all these other impacts that are being done, like tourism, Snowy 2, etc. And that's the frustrating part, that you can't get that message out. But, you know, we haven't got those big dollars behind us like Jack has.
No, that's right. When you said there's no scientific evidence, if you notice the people around us, they all jumped a bit. They heard a thump, and that was Jack actually falling down. He hit his head on the floor because it's like, what? More propaganda. I need more propaganda.
Well, he always refers to there's so much scientific evidence. Well, sure, there's desktop reports and reviews, and there's opinion pieces and articles that have all been signed together by these academics, but not one of those reports that he refers to have actually been out in the field to do field studies, like over time, to measure impacts, to measure creek banks or whatever it is that they do. There's not one. There has been one study that we are aware of that was done by the chair of the Scientific Advisory Panel, I think in between 2020 and 23. So it was over 3 years, and that was Dave Byrne, who's an ecologist, that was the chair of the panel, and he did this study over 3 years, but unfortunately it wasn't in Cozzy, it was over the border in Bogong High Plains and in the Eastern Alps. So it was only really just over the border, so it would certainly relate because it's the same kind of ecosystems. And his studies found that it all depends on the density of the horses. Where there is low density, there was no impact. Where there was higher density, well, there was some impact. But he also mentions that the some impacts should also include beneficial impacts. But of course, any other science, supposed, or articles, of course, they will never look for the beneficial impacts.
No.
And we see that because living here, and it's not just eating the grass and reducing fuel loads, it's actually keeping the bush open, tracks that you can walk along that wouldn't otherwise exist. But then they'll complain about the tracks. Well, you just have to go up to see the walking tracks. They're identical. They look exactly the same as the horse tracks. And the bushwalkers use the Brumbie tracks.
So what needs to be done? We are running out a bit of time because I talk too much.
Yeah, well, I was going to tell you about a bit of history, where the horses actually came from, and it's such a vast history. But here alone on the Moomba River, the Narrego people actually used to catch the horses up around Crackenback and Wallandibby areas, and their family say that they used to drive them from here down to the Tathra Wharf. And they were loaded at the Tathra Wharf to get on ships to go to the Bulwall.
Oh, well.
So that's their story. But there's also evidence of the horses of Kyandra, for example. There was a 22,000 acre horse stud that specialised in cob horses, and it was renowned around the country. And those horses definitely were bred to go to the Bulwall, second Bulwall, in between 1899 and 1902. There's plenty of evidence on that. So that whole area was an actual horse stud. Unfortunately, when he went bankrupt, they had to sell the place and sell a lot of the horses, but the court says that the 120 horses at least were never ever collected. So a lot of those horses obviously would have gone wild. Back in those days there was no fencing or anything, so they would have been there, and there were still some cattle runs that were running around, so the horses would have been quite elusive and hard to catch. But today we even see traits in some of the Brumbies that go back, we think, back to those horses. But there's stories like that all circumnavigating the whole park.
And they want to get rid of that, though.
Of course they do. And you don't see any of this history interpreted anywhere in the park's literature. You know, there should be signage about this used to be here. There was a hotel at Rules Point that everybody used to go to. There was up to 15,000 people lived at Kyandra in the late 1800s. 15,000 people, I mean, sorry.
That's a lot.
So every man and his dog would have had a horse. So if you think about 15,000, that's the size of Cooma. And it was probably only over a short time during the gold diggings. But in those days, everybody would have had a horse. That's 10,000 horses.
That's an enormous amount.
That's right. And so just across from the Kyandra courthouse that is existing now is a place called Wild Horse Plain. So they were renowned in those areas then. As I say, they didn't have fences. There's classifieds in the old newspapers saying how these horses are lost and I found a horse or whatever. So there were horses running around everywhere up there. I mean, there were 14 pubs, 13
I like
bakeries.
that part. How many pubs? 14.
Yes, apparently.
She could do a fortnight of a pub crawl.
So, but now they're trying to tell us that this area is pristine and needs to be saved.
No,
and it's full of gold diggings.
Yes.
It's just the hypocrisy and the lies that are coming out, not so much from even the Jack Goff about that, but it's because they refuse to acknowledge it and talk about it. This is our history.
But also, and we do have to wrap it up pretty soon, but Chris Minns wants to make this into private, to have private companies come in to manage the park. But pesky horses, got to get rid of those pesky horses first of all. And I think what we do need is, first of all, those private companies do not need to come into the national park, and secondly, the one that should be exited should be the current government. Which leads me to the next thing is, many say that regardless of whether it's, say, Labor or the LNP or One Nation or whatever, it's still basically similar policies, just different faces. How do we stop? Well, first of all, we need more of Australians to understand what they're hearing are just pure lies, Jack, and we need to make sure they understand that what they're hearing from Jack is pure lies. But what do we do? How do we arrest this slide? Because there's another cull coming up in November, and if we have such few horses now, can you imagine what's going to happen after November? It'll be decimated. So how do we stop that cull? How do we say to the government, you need not to do this because you will not be voted in? I don't know how we can get through the noise, to the general population. I just don't know how to do that. But what do we do? Because we don't need any more killing of the horses. They are too much Australian. This is what we are all about, and we don't need any more of that. So what would you do? If you were the Prime Minister, heaven forbid, if you were the Prime Minister for a day, give it a week. Might as well let loose, baby. What would you do?
Well, I'd sack a lot of people, that's for sure.
A lot, a bloody lot of them.
And it's mostly bureaucrats that are running the country.
It is, and that's the thing. That's why the policies still remain the same, just different faces. Because of bureaucrats who are unelected. They are unelected, yet they will control what the politicians say.
Absolutely.
And people think it's Chris Minns or whether it's someone else or John Smith or whatever. It's the bureaucrats behind who are advising.
Chris Minns is just a mouthpiece.
He is.
And, I mean, I've worked in 3 levels of government.
You understand it.
And I understand it and I see it.
So what do we do then? You can't sack the whole lot of them.
Well,
but
John Barilaro actually went and sacked a few people when he first came in.
But where's he now?
Well, I'm not sure. I believe that he's actually working for a national senator in federal parliament. But,
Good on him.
But just as an example, when he did get to government, he actually did ask a few to leave out of National Parks hierarchy, I believe. But that's what needs to happen because the bureaucrats are running the country. It's not just national parks. And they inherit, no matter which side of government, they inherit. The bureaucrats stay the same. So that's why nothing changes. So and a lot of them are on more money than the actual members of parliament. So
they are.
Who's behind them?
Yep.
That's what would be interesting. I just wanted to bring to your attention, though, before we do finish up, that just up the hill here, that is called Silver Brumbie country. And that's where some really heritage types of horses were now. They just only a mile up from here was known as Thowra's Secret Valley for those people that have read the Silver Brumbie books. And, of course, they've all been shot now. And it's been so much of our history. And, like I said from the start, I think our ancestors would be just rolling in their graves.
It makes you want to vomit.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
Leisa, if somebody wants to find out more about you, could give us a Facebook page or something.
Snowy Mountains Horse Riders page. Horse Riders Association. We were established back in 1985 when we started lobbying the government because they kicked us out of the park overnight and underhandedly and hijacked our heritage. So we started back then. Then we used to run a day called the Mountain Muster annually for about 18 years. We ran that, and that was mountain racing and bush racing and that sort of thing. So yeah, we're still around. We're not actually incorporated anymore as association, but we're all still friends and
Good on you.
And we're all sticking it out. So besides that Facebook page, there's a Park Off page, so.
Which is very good, and it's very sad. And I have to tell you, there are many out there, and all sorts of they're going to save the world and all sorts of things. We can't save the world. We're just here, just trying to have a conversation and some sort of determination.
Well, I think it's awareness.
I think so.
Making people aware of what's really happening rather than listening to the propaganda and the garbage that they're getting from others. I mean, it's not even coming from the government. It's coming from these other lobbyists.
It's terrible. But they listen to them.
Yeah.
And it's
well, they don't know any better. They don't know any different. That's the thing.
Very sad indeed.
Yeah.
We have to call it quits.
Okay.
Now, but by the way, I talk more than you, but you're pretty good at it.
I'll have a drink.
Actually, good idea. Did you bring one?
No.
What?
Cup of tea. I had a cup of tea.
I'll have to raid. I hear that Brett's got a nice little cellar somewhere here.
Yeah,
I'm
bet.
sure he has, but he's got it bolted, and he's standing guard with a 12 gauge, which is always a wise thing to do. Yeah. This is the Country Telegraph. Thank you very much for joining us. This is a live broadcast from today. It's Jindabyne. We're covering the whole schmozzle, the abomination and the shooting of these beautiful creatures. Coming up next, we have a surprise for you. This is the Country Telegraph.
Hey there, this is Ashley Avis. I am here on the ground in Australia, and I wanted to put out a message to anyone who's watching this. For anyone that has information surrounding the Brumby cull, anyone who has information about the shooting of the Palomino stallion and his family, and for anyone who is bold enough to speak, any of the shooters, anybody who has been a shooter, anyone in the parks that knows what is going on with the Brumbies is egregious and knows that this is wrong, I'd really like to talk to you. As a journalist, I can maintain confidentiality. We can distort your voice. We need people to stand up. And I also have a message for the individual who approached me a few days ago in Jindabyne at 6 a.m. within the BP station. The person who asked me if I was the girl on Facebook going on about the bloody Brumbies. It was very aggressive, and I think that somebody like you, if you are willing to talk to me about what your stance is on the Brumbies, we would like to hear from anyone who has information about what is going on in the park and anyone who is bold enough to speak, even if you don't agree with the compassionate solutions that we're putting forth. Contact at wildbeautyfoundation.org.
Burrinjuck Dam is 98 years old. It was completed in 1928, and the concrete is deteriorating from the inside out through a process called alkali silica reaction, which is an irreversible chemical expansion that causes cracking and weakens the structure over time. In 1937, engineers discovered structural weaknesses so serious they drew up evacuation plans for 20,000 people living downstream, and the dam has only aged since then. Right now, Burrinjuck holds 1,026 gigalitres, but the catchment it sits on covers nearly 13,000 square kilometres and routinely delivers far more water than the dam can store. In October 2022 alone, around 1,200 gigalitres flowed into Burrinjuck in a single month, more than its entire capacity. And the excess had nowhere to go but downstream into communities that ended up flooded. That year was Australia's costliest natural disaster on record, with $5.56 billion in insured losses and 10 million tonnes of grain destroyed. The proposal is to rebuild Burrinjuck with a new wall that takes capacity from 1,026 gigalitres to 4,000 gigalitres, which is an additional 3,000 gigalitres of storage. To put that in perspective, the federal government has spent $7.2 billion recovering approximately 2,100 gigalitres through buybacks under the Basin Plan, and buying 3,000 gigalitres on the open market at current prices would cost anywhere from $27 billion to $60 billion. Building the storage costs between $4 and $6 billion. On top of that, a rebuilt Burrinjuck could generate 100 to 200 megawatts of hydroelectric power, bringing in $40 to $60 million a year in energy revenue. It could dedicate over 650 gigalitres to environmental flows without competing with irrigators. and it would act as a flood buffer that protects downstream communities the way Dartmouth Dam does on the Murray, where 70% of flood events have been completely absorbed since it was commissioned. The Murray-Darling Basin produces $30 billion in agricultural output every year and supplies over a third of this country's food. Rebuilding Byrne secures that food production, protects communities from floods, generates clean energy, delivers environmental water, and replaces a dam that is approaching the end of its structural life. Every year we delay this decision. The dam gets older and the cost of inaction gets higher.
I didn't choose this life. I was born to live it. So was Dad, his dad, and his dad before that.
Come on, ladies.
You're supposed to be slowing down, you know. It's payback for the free labour you got out of me as a kid.
I learned from watching my mum and dad and how they work together. So does my sister Sally.
Any trains? I don't. Feet up.
I'll always remember these days. It's the happiest days of my life. Together as a family.
Oh, you're so lucky I love you.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that about right, is it?
I don't know how you're going to deal with all this.
Deal with what?
$6 million debt?
Most farmers are in this amount of debt. As farmers, we gamble with the weather every day, and it's a risk we take.
You have no idea what I'm going through.
Maybe you should talk to someone.
Oh my God, no, I'm fine.
No, you're not, Alison.
You and Dad's coward.
Play a game of footy, all right?
Where's heaven?
What?
Where's heaven?
The sky, I think.
Can we go there?
You could just push that button, Cam. There we are. Look at that. You had to find the 20-cent piece to put in it. Welcome back, by the way, to the Country Telegraph. Dunbar Wilkinson is a prominent fifth-generation Snowy Mountains grazier and cattle breeder. He's got a strong interest and expertise in agricultural land management and enhancing national biodiversity in the Australian high country. Dunbar is a former horsebreaker, stockman drover, bull catcher, and for 20 years was captain and senior deputy for his local bushfire brigade. Dunbar, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Tell me about your thoughts on the cull and the proposed cull in November.
Look, I think it's a pretty extreme thing to bring. If we look at why aerial culling was banned with horses back at the Guy Fawkes debacle, some people will know of that, some won't, but you can look it up if you want. But it happened in about 2000, roughly 20 odd years ago. I think that was mostly exposed the huge animal welfare concerns that happened up there was mostly exposed by local people riding in and having a look around in there, and what they found was pretty horrific. You know, there was horses still getting around days later with bullets in them, still alive.
Oh, that's terrible.
I think there was a horse there that actually lived through it all that had a couple of bullets in its neck that made it out the other side and survived the whole thing. I can't remember if it was rehomed or what the story was, but there was certainly a lot of very confronting animal welfare issues there, and the RSPCA were, involved and put a lot of heat on. They had a different CEO back then. They put a lot of heat on National Parks and Wildlife Services over that, and eventually they were going to take them to court, but I think there was a bit of a deal done where they were only had to face a couple of counts of animal cruelty instead of multiple ones that had originally been listed. But that was why that pressure and that exposure was what caused the Labor government at the time to pull aerial culling of horses off, full stop, and ban it. And that hung out, that followed on for, like you say, ballpark 20 odd years. And then when it was reinstated after the Labor government assured in Parliament, assured they never would bring it in when someone mentioned it. And some of the, I just can't remember the actual names now, but I can dig them up for you, but some of the other Labor people were quite offended about this insinuation that they would bring aerial culling back in, and they said, look, we've talked to firefighters that have flown up in the mountains there, and they've told us how extreme the updrafts and air currents are there, that there's no way we would be bringing aerial culling in there. I think their words were they were quite offended that you would even suggest it, because that would, I'm not getting the actual words here, but along the lines of that would be too horrible to contemplate what would happen. And that was the Labor government saying that. So then you fast forward to 2022, 23, I think it was, when they really started bringing in all this, pushing to get this in. Well, I think a valid question is what's changed since then in 2020? What are they going to do differently to make sure those animal welfare atrocities don't happen? Well, and the answer is they didn't make things more stringent. They went the other way. They wrote their own plan, their own SOPs that don't align with the national guidelines. So they brought that in basically so that they didn't have any of those hoops to jump. And some of those hoops are the national guidelines for that. They insist on headshots or heart shots only, not shooting in heavily timbered country. I think they have. I think there's guidelines on how long they can chase times allow. I think they don't. There's guidelines there to stop them shooting through foaling season. All of those were cut out of the new SOPs. They've brought in. It's free for all. Basically, they can shoot in any timber they want. There's no one. There's no camera. The RSPCA. That was the one thing, check and balance. The RSPCA, as far as I understand, recommended they have cameras installed for animal welfare and transparency, and they've refused to use that. They're allowing chest shots anywhere. So, yeah, I'd actually just like to point out something that Jack Goff mentioned on the current affair program recently. I'll just refer to my phone so I can get the actual words. This is the best regulated and the most scrutinised feral animal control program in the world.
I saw that.
So I'd like to ask Jack Goff how he can square that with those things I've just mentioned. And as far as scrutinised, well, where are these cameras? If it's so humane, why aren't they using those cameras? And I've been told that they actually have cameras already on these choppers for firefighting purposes. So if that's correct, that's not even a good
footage. But it's not great footage.
Possibly not, but it would be something. And they're not even refusing to use that, for transparency.
So if just then, from what you've told me, what would this then suggest?
Well, it suggests that they're a law unto themselves. Really, they've brought in they've made up their own SOPs, so they can pretty much do everything wrong and still get over the line, and still, with I guess a lot of propaganda, convince people like Jack Goff, promoting that it's all humane, there's nothing to worry about. But I would challenge anyone that says that is humane to get, particularly these people making these big decisions in Parliament, that they should be up. They should go up in one of those choppers before they approve of it, and before they promote how humane it is, to go and have a look at what's going on up there.
Peter Cochrane said to us that he thought we had probably about 800. That was a few weeks ago. Brumbies in the park. And so the 16,000, or was it 16.2 million 12-legged horse running around the place, whatever. I mean, whatever Jack thought, Jack would say. And so if there are only 800, and that was a few weeks ago, and they continue the current rate of, for example, in November, the numbers will get down to, probably way below 400, I would think, which would resemble something that happened in the Bogong High Plains in Victoria, and eventually there'll be no more Brumbies. Now, when I actually hear about the culling of and the shooting of these animals, I think surely we've passed that point that we have to go and kill everything just to get numbers down, because these animals, they're not stupid, they're highly intelligent, they have all the emotions that you would expect, and yet we still go out and cruelly annihilate them. Surely there are better ways now that we can stop this. And with 800 horses or less, if Peter's right, I mean, we don't want to go the way Victoria went, because that was truly, if Victorians knew about that, really knew about it, and appreciated this magnificent creature dying, and I always think, I see the animal lying on the ground dead, and I think, what a travesty, what a disrespect to that being's history and its community it had. And I think how sad that it's just lying there, just totally disregarded by someone who's shot it. And I can't get my head around that.
Well, I guess it's particularly that, it's being pushed so much that this is an urgency, by these promoters of it, that's such an urgent thing.
Just bullshit, isn't it?
It is, there's not that urgency, there's not those numbers, and I think that's where a lot of people are really worried, because they don't have this government has given them no reason to have any confidence in their word, in their judgment whatsoever, particularly, the likes of getting back to numbers. If everyone knew they were straight talkers and they had confidence in those counts, well, I guess that would be some reassurance. Look, we're not happy about what you're doing, but at least you're going to leave a viable population left. But that's not what they say. They'll often say things along those lines, that there's no plans to wipe them out, but there's a lot of other little things they've said that I just actually saw my local member comment of his the other day. He just said there's no place for feral animals in a national park, full stop. That was his comment on the horse.
And he was still assuming that the horse was feral, which the horse is not feral. That's just a name that's been attributed to the horse by people who want to get rid of the horse. The Brumbie, to call the Brumbie feral, I think that is just, I've never heard of such shit in my life. Excuse the French, I don't mean to do that, but I haven't heard of such garbage in my life.
I've heard plenty worse, Mike. But
you can't refer to them as that.
Well, it's just pretty. It's very calculated, isn't it? That term's only seems to have been bandied around quite lately.
Chicker.
It almost sounds like they're dirty suddenly.
Like the vermin of the bush.
And that's. Like I've said to you before, and the majority of people that are concerned about this, they're not. It doesn't have to be the all or nothing. It doesn't. We're not saying no management involved. You've talked about the birth control technology. There's rehoming that could. If there was the money spent on these other programs that's been put into these aerial culling programs, we'd be so much
$8
further.
million.
And that's quite a lot. There's been a lot of shooting since that 8-point-something million, so we don't know where that's at now.
I did a calculation. I went through just a bit of research, thinking, how can you control the horses without shooting them? And one of them was the programs. When they're young, you can make them less fertile, and it worked out. It was $550. $450 to $550. That's what it cost. So if you said there were 800, so 400, say, male horses there, if you said there were still under 4 million. So you have the saving of, at least 6 or 7 million. Now, I could be wrong there. They say as a horse gets older, you can't do some things, but science is really good. Bullets are not.
Well, you know, I know you may have heard this from some of the other people you've talked to, but I know in the lead up to this last cull here that we had, the rehomers, various rehomers, between all of them, they had orders in with national parks for 90 horses, and they weren't given them, and that was in the lead up to this cull. So I don't know what's going on there, where they just were ignoring those. They said they're not available, but they're available to go and shoot them a month. You know, like there's just not much there to give local people or concerned people any confidence in how this is being managed. You know,
and we all know that the Invasive Species Council are a cancer. Why would local rangers align with them against other locals? I mean, I don't understand that, because they know they're part of the community.
Yeah, I don't know whether I can really answer that for you, Mike. You might be somebody else better placed to answer that. But I think that one factor is there is not nearly as many rangers that are long-term locals. That's not to say they're not there, because they are. And I've got good friends that are rangers. You know, there's some good people in that service. But I think there's been a change over the last 30-odd years, where there's a lot less of people that are staying in a community with their ranger career throughout their life, and that's that's sort of that plays out a bit as far as just doing a quick zigzag here, but as far as some of the concerns, I think we'll get onto them later with fire, bushfire management, that's something that I guess it's a real worry and a bit of a beef for a lot of locals, that particularly with these bigger fires, on top of a workforce, local workforce that not necessarily are particularly local. Then you bring in, at a bigger fire, they bring in a lot of staff from elsewhere. Well, I'm not sure of how all the but I'm pretty sure they get pretty healthy overtime on the weekends, possibly other fringe benefits for being away from home.
Yes.
That's not a. They don't. They're on a different footing to people living in those communities, joining those national parks that have a lot of skin in the game. They've got families, they've got livestock, they've got fences, they've got everything they own in the path of these fires that come. With this poor fire management in these parks, it's just a matter of when, not if.
So how important then are horses for controlling, for fire management, not controlling the fire itself?
Well, I touched on that in that last interview with you, that I think they're just so overlooked. They're one of the most overlooked factors there. I just think that they're a real resource. If they were managed properly, there could be so much done, and I'd like to see some research into that. Once again, getting back to this money spent on killing things, spend some money on seeing what actually is really going on with those effects, with those endangered species from the horses versus horses being able to mitigate fire, which, as far as I'm aware, most people that really know a lot about, that are really sort of up on this study with these endangered species, I think the majority of them would agree one of the biggest threats facing them is fire, is big fire. So why not, before we just shoot these horses to kingdom come, look at some of these things that can be done to mitigate fire with them. And I mentioned to you that I think part of the numbers have built up, since locals weren't allowed to manage those horses. They did build up, particularly in some areas, which, it wasn't a great representation of horses in the landscape. I think some of the national parks trapping might have exaggerated that a bit, where they were putting lick out in various yards that weren't so far apart. So it was creating a bit of a magnet for horses to be congregating in bigger numbers than they normally would. But yeah, if you could get a pack horse, take salt up into some of these ridge lines where we've got a lot of regrowth from these fires, get these horses instead of being so comfy and hanging around these riparian zones, get them working up into that timber country, walking tracks into there and grazing some of those longer unpalatable grasses in the gullies up there, because if you get a Brumbie pad, particularly if you can get them following a ridge line along the top of the watershed, it gives you a lot of a big head start if you're trying to deal with a lightning strike up in that country. And those ridge lines are more prone to lightning strike than out in the open plains, just because of the closer point of contact electrically, plus I think there's a higher mineral content in the rocks up on the ridges, so they're more attractive to lightning strikes.
Here's one thing, because first of all, I think the renewables are a scam. And I look at the wind turbines and I think how to destroy our beautiful landscape. If you look at the Great Dividing Range, the raising parts of the top of it off to put these monstrosities there, thousands of wildlife hated, blah, blah, blah. All that sort of stuff kills the wildlife. However, they haven't got roads. There's many, many hundreds of kilometres without tracks. This is where the Brumbie is absolutely superb and get to places. Now, if you have a lightning strike, you can't get in, you can't do aerial because the things are too tall.
Well, they even with, there is, I don't know if you've heard of the RAFT teams, that stands for Remote Area Firefighting Teams.
No, I haven't actually.
And I think, I haven't had a hell of a lot to do with them myself. I did look into doing it at one stage. It was mentioned at one of our local brigade meetings that if you're interested in joining up, there's quite a stringent fitness test involved. And the way I understand that operates, if you've got a lightning strike up in some inaccessible country, they can get a chopper in there and winch a team in there. I can't remember exactly, but I think ballpark it was probably 4 to half a dozen people. One of them will have a leaf blower, one of them have a chainsaw, one of them may, or a couple of McLeod tools, fire rakes, and they can get in there potentially, particularly when conditions are milder, which they often are after a lightning strike, in that window period before the next day or two when things warm up. And I think there's a lot of merit in that, because I think with this fire problem, I've said to you before, I think we're going to see these big fires that we've experienced over the last 20 years, I think we're going to see that on a more regular basis. And I think the quicker we can get in and respond to fires, by far the better. A stitch in time, you only need a bucket full of water to put a fire out.
That's right.
If you're quick enough. But, so those Brumbie pads can really help with OH&S and help those staff, remote area fire teams, to isolate a fire. They've already got a Brumbie pad in there to light a fire off or to use as bare ground to rake off. They've got it if things go wrong and they need to get out of there and the smokes come in and that chopper can't pick them up. They've got Brumbie pads to help get them out, get out of there quickly if you have a wind change or something, because that country's impenetrable to walk through.
That's right. And once it's gone for a long time. And I think but I take all that aside. I think we need to stop the shooting right now. I think it's inhumane, and I think it's not how Australians should act by any stretch. If somebody wants to find out more about you, we've asked you this before, but we need you to repeat it, and because there are plenty of young women out there that have been writing in about you. No, they haven't. I'm not joking about that part. But how would they find out about you? How can they make a difference and add their weight behind what's happening at the moment?
Well, I'd suggest I'm not a great social media person. I do have a Facebook page, but I don't really interact with it much. But it is there if people do want to contact me. But I'd suggest some of these, the likes of this Park Off group. I think Burnsy might have mentioned it to you.
They're pretty good, aren't they?
Yeah, and there's various. You'll see other people that have written in there that make a lot of sense in what they're saying, and you can make contact with them too to broaden the net.
I think so too. Dunbar, it's always a pleasure. Nice
Thanks.
to meet you in person.
Yeah, likewise.
I thought you were about 6'6" tall.
Oh well, I am when I'm wearing my high heels.
Just wait there for 1 second. We're going to say goodbye. This is the Country Telegraph. Coming up next. Not Rocky Balboa, but somebody pretty close to a Rocky here at the Country Telegraph.
There's around 17,000 level crossings around Australia, many of these on country roads like the one behind me here. They have no lights or boom gates.
We are saying this needs to change, and we want mandatory legislation introduced to ensure that all trains have safety lighting. This issue affects all Australians, and we know that people that are from metropolitan areas are at greater risk of a crash with a train because they're expecting full controls in place that they're just not going to get in regional areas where these level crossings are protected only by signage.
In Australia, there's strict lighting requirements for trucks, buses, cars, even bicycles. But when it comes to Australia's biggest land vehicle, trains, there are no mandatory standards in place, and this anomaly really needs to be corrected.
When approaching a railway level crossing, especially those without lights or boom gates, drivers must exercise caution and must always check that it is safe to cross. But a driver can't give way to a train they can't see.
The rail industry is very profitable, powerful and protected. We have a unique situation where the Rail Industry Safety and Standards Board is owned and controlled by rail operators. So they have the power to put commercial interests before public safety.
By law, trucks must have marker lights that clearly show their full length, width and height from every angle, day or night. If a truck doesn't meet these lighting rules, it can't legally be on the road. If it's good enough for trucks, it's good enough for trains.
If those changes had been made back then, we would still have our family members today. Instead, we have to watch on while other families go through these completely preventable tragedies. Something as simple, as cheap and affordable as a beacon light could have saved 3 precious, beautiful lives in our particular crash.
Over the years, there's been far too many tragedies at level crossings around Australia. And on behalf of the many families and communities affected, I really do appeal to our government and to industry to support mandatory safety lighting on all trains.
Authorised by Lara Jensen, Mount Magnet.
And welcome back to the Country Telegraph. I'm Mike Ryan. I've got this guy here next to me. All he wants is something out of the Western. I mean, truly, I love that moustache. We'll find out more about that in a second and many other things. Our guest is Rocky Harvey, Jindabyne businessman, park user, horse rider. Rocky's passion for trout fishing and hunting drew him to the Australian snowy mountains, where he met his other love. I was going to thought it might have been a horse for a second, but a wonderful horse riding woman. That led to the cowboy hat, Cuban heels. Yep, a horse named Jesus. Correct. And eventually a moustache that if Jesus had his way, it would not be there.
That's actually not true. If my wife had it her way, it would not be there.
All right. Forgive me. Now, they shared a frustration that the Australian Alps, despite their European climate and cultural connections, had very little truly local produce. If small goods should be made anywhere in Australia, they thought it's the snowy mountains. It was Brad, and let's get this name right, Brad Wild Brumby Distillery. That's right, Brad Wild Brumby Distillery. After declaring that their best produce was feral, trout, deer, rabbit and weeds. Brad challenged society members to bring a plate of something feral to drinks each Sunday afternoon. Rocky took up the challenge, plating up venison in the form of salami, carpaccio, sausages. Were they good sausages?
What sort of a question is that?
Sorry about that.
Some good sausages.
Snaggers, by the way, and dry cured and also trout and rabbit dishes, many made with wild Brumby gin botanicals. And therefore, Rock Stock Deli was born. Rocky, greetings.
You too, Mike?
Is that a real moustache?
Do you want to pull it?
No, you'll punch me. I'll get a whack in the ears or something.
Well, you can take the risk.
But I bet you there are many out there that would like to do that to you sometimes. Like hang you up from it. Would that be about right?
I wouldn't say many. There might be some.
Yeah, probably one.
One, could be one.
That's right. Anyway, and good afternoon. I'm not going to mention the name. Now, tell us about the best feral food. Now, by the way, they refer to horses now as feral, which is truly, that is so bad, isn't it?
Yeah, and I've eaten a lot of feral food, but I've never eaten a horse, that's for sure.
No, it's the Brumbie is not feral by any stretch. But tell us about some of the best feral food. I'm from the bush. We used to go out rabbiting. I stopped when I realised that I couldn't hit the side of a barn. But the rabbit is actually a very nice food, isn't it? You don't like it?
I'm not big on rabbit. I'd eat other things if I had the choice.
Like what?
Beef.
Yeah, okay.
But look, I've eaten heaps of feral food, and we used to have a lot of fun with it at the distillery. Mm-hmm. We'd go down a Sunday afternoon, and you mentioned weeds. We did eat wild watercress, deep-fried dandelions.
Oh, I love that.
But you can deep-fry anything. You batter it, crumb it, deep-fry it. You can deep-fry a beer box, and it comes up all right.
Great. Next time we mow our lawn, we'll just send it down to you. All right. But tell us about the, some of the great dishes that you've cooked using the feral produce here.
God,
because tell us if I came into your cafe and I said I want something really flash, what would you give me?
Look, we still do venison sausages, and so we buy it in. Obviously, as a commercial venture, we can't pick them up off the side of the road or anything. But yeah, there's guys around who harvest it commercially, and so I do venison sausages, like Italian style sausages. A lot of the stuff we do in the shop now is not feral food based. It certainly was the inspiration of working with Brad at the distillery and all the neighbours at the time. But God, we ate venison certainly starred in our feral food society. We ate that every which way. Raw in salamis. Yeah, carpaccio. You put a good sauce.
Poor Bambi.
Poor cows, poor sheep.
Stop it. But I always think of that little... Anyway, that's another story. Sorry, I won't go there. Onto some serious stuff. Dick Roberts, a member of Parkhoff, wrote recently, Australians need to ask a much bigger question. What are our national parks actually for? What are they for?
Well, in theory, they're for the people and for the people to use.
What do they become?
What they've become is locked up land that's not managed. There's this. It seems to me that parks have a concept that you just lock it up and it's going to somehow revert to its pristine former state. But when it's much of this land's been grazed, been decimated by fires, and not managed. Like it was traditionally managed for a lot of years. The fuel loads, the traditional owners would burn country. And it's a lot of people talk about using the traditional techniques, but there is the issues. I was chatting to a guy who was in bushfire all his life, and he said, one of the big differences now why we can't use just a pure traditional technique is we have assets. We have roads, power lines, huts, and it adjoins private land where there's, people's houses and stuff. So, it is tricky, but, I believe that national parks are now managing or mismanaging or not managing way too much land. They don't have the resources, even though they've got a huge amount of resources and are actually professional athletes in wasting money. They don't manage it. A lot of this country is just locked up and not touched. And so then we see, like people like to blame the climate change and everything, but these catastrophic bushfires are about fuel loads. You break it, break it back to the real basics. You don't have giant fires unless you've got a lot of fuel. And that's just a classic example of their, this concept they have of just locking it up, and then locking it up for what? Even if you go to Victoria, their parks are a lot more accessible than ours. You know, there's a lot more accessible fire trails through them. You know, and it's just such a bizarre management technique that they're applying.
It's and the governments are increasingly treating them as assets for carbon projects, and you look at you know the damage to those feral horses, those magnificent Brumbies are doing to the Kosciuszko National Park. If you look at Snowy 2.0,
it's doing a little bit of damage too, isn't it?
It's just a tiny bit. But tell us about, are you aware of the carbon projects?
Look, I've heard about it. I haven't researched it in depth, so I certainly wouldn't, you know, I can't discuss it like I know much about it. It's certainly a plausible theory. You know, that they would try and do that, you know, and try and claim offsets or whatever, you know. Yeah, but I just and I think that's another example of parks management style, how it's so secretive. You know, like everything they do is clouded in secrecy. You know, they hate you know, the public sort of knowing what they're on about.
I won't get a Christmas card. I'm very disappointed.
Yeah, no, you'll probably not be on the card list.
No, behind you, of course, and everybody else. But how's the park management changed over the years?
Oh, look, you know, that one's dead simple. You know, the park rangers on the ground used to be locals, bushmen, who'd grown up in the area and very much local knowledge. Whereas, you know, now the guys on the grounds, you know, the yellow shirt guys who just come around, you know, clean the toilets and drive around pointlessly, you know, they're sort of more realistic, but the guys making the decisions are just uni grads, you know, and the bulk of these decisions are made from Sydney. You know, like they're made in offices. They're not made by, you know, people who are out in the country and know the country, you know. And it's, you know, it's people like us who spend, you know, every weekend and weeks at a time out in the park and really know it. And yet, you know, there's no... You know, if they have a public consultation, I think they, you know, get a bunch of papers and then just file it in the bottom drawer and you know, I mean, they don't take any notice of the traditional owners either. No. You know, it's just box ticking, and they, I think you're going to have a chat to Andrew Wildsmith, you know, he's an ARIO fella. You know, they just ignore them as well. You know, it's just, and that's one of the things that really frustrates me is that, you know, there's such arrogance in the management techniques, you know, and this goes, you know, all the upper management right through to the minister. You know, I mean, the heli shoot, the last really big one, where they seriously, you know, that wasn't a heli shoot, that was a massacre. You know, they did that while there was a parliamentary inquiry into heli shooting ongoing. And, you know, the arrogance of a minister...
So they didn't give a rat's.
They don't care. Like, they just, you know... And that goes across the board, you know, like their management techniques, they don't take on board advice. They just, you know, they've got their agenda and they do whatever the hell they want, you know.
So how do we arrest that development?
Change of government.
Yeah, but... Yeah, many say that because the bureaucrats, they're the ones that...
that's right, but it needs a change of government, a strong government that actually restructures parks. You know, that's what I would really like to see, you know, and it would need a real shake-up because the whole of parks upper management is all of the same ilk. You know, I've heard of people talk about, oh, you know, I sort of got moved on because I didn't take the injection, which is the, you know, their way of saying you didn't fit into to the picture. And so they've created, you know, a whole upper management that are all the same type of people.
How do we restructure the park?
Restructure the park or the staff?
Well, the staff, even the staff. But do we, with the staff, you're going to come, do we need to go back to what we used to be?
Look, I don't think it's a matter of going back. It's always got to be going forward. But what you need to do is, you know, give upper management instructions, you know, and it would require, you know, new legislation too, I think, you know, to say, okay, we need to manage the parks a different way. You know, we need to, you know, take on board local advice, you know, have local panels. And they've done sort of, you know, local panels, but like I said, they just file it. They just go through the motions and probably have a giggle back at the office and chuck it in the bin. But it would need a strong government, to really, take up the people's cause. And I think politically, the political environment right now is about as good as it has been for a long time to potentially see some sort of change.
And we have this very keen to change our history or our what made Australia Australians. I mean, when you grew up, you probably around Ned Kelly. No, actually, I was around Ned Kelly. Sorry about that. But I'm just thinking how it's all changed. I mean, we used to, those that had knowledge, for example, of the land, of the Kosciuszko National Park, for example, they would be listened to.
Yeah, and look, there's a really strong European history in the park, of the cattle days and early settlement. Like it wasn't a national park; it was state land and cattle leases. And look, no doubt parks went through a stage where they were dead keen to just erase that. They were burning cattlemen's huts and just trying to erase.
That is nuts.
Now they restore them, but there was a period where rangers would pull up and just tip some fuel on it and burn the cattleman's hut so that it was gone. There was a theory they didn't belong in the park. Now they sort of, after they burn them down through mismanagement of fuel loads, they actually rebuild them now. But still, Kyandra was a town, not just a village. Like I think it held maybe 20 or 30% of New South Wales population at one stage. Yeah,
that's incredible.
And now there's one building left. And so same again though. They were dead set on erasing, the European history. And they spruik about the traditional owners and that side of it. But geez, like I've said, they don't really take much notice of them either.
It's a real pity, isn't it? I think to lose an appreciation of our past. I just.
Well, 100%, and we don't have a long history here. Like
No.
a mate posted on Facebook a while back that he has a strong emotional connection with the land up here, and I replied, so do I. And sure, he's a black fella, and so his history goes back, or his ancestry and everything goes back a lot further. But as Europeans, ours is really short. But does that mean you should discard it? If anything, you should preserve it just as much as any other culture. And this is where people really get shitty at parks, is that they've got that attitude that they just not interested.
And it's this is off topic entirely. Always my eyebrows raise, and then I mutter a few words whenever I see, for example, our Prime Minister, when he gets up, there's all the other flags. At times they forget the Australian flag.
Yeah.
And we are just one country, whether we're here 4,000 years ago, whether you were here 200 years ago, or you're here for, it's your family. I mean, you've been here for 4,000, of course, but I mean, it's we have that history, that attachment to, as you said, to the land. And I don't understand why you would fly a number of flags unless you're trying to be divisive.
Oh, look, I don't agree with that either. I think it's got to be one nation. And that's not a political statement. Sorry, that just came out like that.
Pauline, please explain. She
but
says.
You can't have flying a dozen flags. I don't get. You need to. It does need to be just an integrated society.
Just the blue one we have. That's pretty good, I reckon. Yeah. A few little stars on it. How many stars are on it? I keep forgetting. But we love Australia, mate. Beauty. It's just so terrible. But it's blue. There are parts.
I don't see it enough. It's never flying.
That's right. But you're dead right. Jen, who's our producer, sorry, Jen, for this part, but she was saying that she saw, I think it was Albanese at some conference, some presser, and he just had their Aboriginal flag behind it. I mean, give me a break. Yeah. What would the Americans say?
Yeah, that's right. Like they take their flag
Donald
seriously.
Trump, he'd invade us.
Yeah.
Please, anyway. So we have, there are 6 stars. That's Lynn, our helper. Their group here has 6 stars. See, and you knew that, but you were just being shy. Is that right?
No, it's just for the show,
That's right. All that hate mail coming in. Look, we've got to go. Tell me if somebody wants to find out more about you. How do they do that? Plug.
Find more about me or my business.
About you and your business. Hey? Okay,
if you Google Rocky Harvey, there's not that many. If you Google Rocky Harvey Jindabyne, there's only one.
Yes.
And you'll find quite a lot of information.
Good or bad information?
Well,
truthful or untruthful?
Look, it depends on your view. Some people think some of it's bad. Other people think it's absolutely terrific. My food is excellent.
Yeah, that's right. Look, it's like this. Anything that Rocky has written about himself, don't believe a word of it, but believe everything else.
No, I've got a very interesting social media style. Don't believe any of that.
I just heard, what's his name, the one that runs Facebook anyway, he's just had a heart attack.
Zuckerberg,
that's
he had
right.
a heart attack.
No, I just made that part up because he heard you don't give a rat's about social media.
No, I use social media all the time.
Elon, sorry. You know, we used to have Elon Musk's father on our show every week.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we were bad boys. But that's another story, and that's about it. We've got to say goodbye because we've been going for a long time. I'm going to play a song in a second. My favourite song, and I think it really encapsulates what's happening at the moment at the Kosciuszko National Park and the Brumbies. First of all, Rocky, thank you very much.
You're welcome, mate.
Where did you buy that from, that moustache? No, it's real.
Rub cow shit in it. It grows nice.
Does
and
it
thick.
really? It smells good too. I would imagine that the missus wouldn't want to kiss you a whole lot. That's her excuse. Look, thank you so much for your company.
You're welcome, mate.
We've been stupid. I will be in trouble for it, but it's your fault. This has been the Country Telegraph. Have a good one. We'll catch you tomorrow. We're broadcasting live all week from the Snowy Mountains, part of Australia, and it is really cold, let me tell you. Being from the Gold Coast, it is really cold. Have a good one. I love this song too. This is, as I said, it encapsulates what's happening about the Snowy Mountains area and the Kosciuszko National Park.
Tell my fool I kept on running. Tell my mirror I heard her cry. Tell the mountain I belonged here. Tell the wind I said goodbye. Brumby hoofprints etched for generations in the snow. I've watched the foals become the mares, the stallions old and slow. Here in the snowy mountains, where my life began, across hills, ridges and open plains, my fellow Brumbies ran. I've led them through winter storms, drought and summer rain, but I can't outrun what follows now. Shield my family from this pain. My ancestors crossed the oceans, but I was born upon this land. These mountains are my birthplace, the Snowies are my clan. These mountains hold our memories, our family history. If home is where you're raised, then this is where we should be. Tell my foal I kept on running. Tell my mare I heard her cry. Tell the mountain I belonged here. Tell the wind I said goodbye. Stay close beside me, little one. The thunder isn't rain. The sky itself is hunting us, and I cannot stop the pain. I gather those I love and turn to face the sound. tells me run. There's nowhere left for us now. These mountains hold our memories, our family history. If home is where you're raised, then this is where we should be. I fall upon the ground, thunder again and again. My heart grows quiet as bullets rain. I thought I had more seasons, more rivers left to roam, more sunrises with my Kosciuszko clan before the mountains called me home. Tell them I was born here, my grandfathers fought their wars. Remind them that this was our home. The snowy mountains were ours. Tell my fool I knew her fear. Tell my mare I heard her call. Tell my fool I tried to save them. Tell the wind how Brumbies fall. Tell my fool I kept on running. Tell my mare I heard her cry. Tell the mountain I belonged here. Tell the wind I said goodbye.